Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome all the architects here. Vinu, Daniel, Sham, Salim, and Akshay, Heranjal. And the topic, has already been mentioned, we're talking about temporary structures, ephemeral architecture. So I thought it would be best to start with where we are, which is Kerala Literature Festival. And we just got to know that all three of you sent designs for the German pavilion. Akshay Heranjal has designed the German pavilion here. So let's get behind the scenes and let's understand the stories that inspired both Sham and Vinu to send the concepts for the pavilion. Sham, why don't you start?
Hi, everyone. So I think probably I would like to say a lot of our intentions when I finally came and saw Akshay's Pavilion also, I feel like the intention or the narrative that we've all kind of gotten inspired from has a lot in common. And I think it's always been a case of when you're building for a pavilion, when you're building for the community, like it's for everyone, right? So the main core thing is that you have to be very sure that you're not trying to build something that to make a name for yourself, but rather you want to build something that the community engages with, a community feels like a part of, and it just invites people in. So our thought process basically went along the same line, and also being from Calicut, Calicut Beach has always been, our pride and everything.
Right.
So literally everyone in Calicut would have something that they've done in Calicut or in the beach. Like any happy moment, you'd be like, oh, let's go to the beach or anything like that. So for us, the key thing when we were conceptualizing it was that we never wanted to block the sea at any point. You wanted to see the sea, the beach, enjoy the breeze passing through it, and also invite people to just come and hang out, even if they're not, too intellectual or too into the serious talks that are going on. They can just come and hang out there. And also the material palette, like being very temporal structure, and probably be inspired from the basic concept of like any temporary structure in Kerala would have been made as pandals or pandal as they say in Hindi, and they basically use palm or bamboos for the temporary frame structures. And I was very happy to see like they kind of went along the same line. So that's basically I think the whole concept of temporality, like a sudden structure that has been erected upon that, the first thing that comes from in your memory is these kind of structures, right? So we kind of drove from that and evolved the space accordingly. And we also wanted to kind of accept the reality of having the fisherman community as a big part of the beach, and we tried to use the fishing nets and all of those as an element to form screens between the spaces and everything. And I feel like all of those kind of tied together nicely in a manner that kind of encapsulated Calicut and its culture of inviting and hosting people and having people over from everywhere. So I think, yeah, the whole concept of temporality is what we wanted to lean on. But yeah.
Yeah. Vinu?
Yeah, I agree on the first part of what Sham said, but I generally have two more reasons for doing it. One is that every temporary festival means people always have something to hear. Like for example, a talk is happening, a music show is happening. So the temporary festival is generally done with an industrial framework,
Right.
and it is always great to experiment on that. And the magic that happens for both architect and
And
the people who are coming is quite fascinating. So it's something that every architect, so when you ask the question like, okay, what prompted you to give the design, every architect sitting here would give design. That is not even a concern, because they would love to do something magical on that temporary basis, because it is experimental in nature and people also can experience it. So one great part which Akshay did is Akshay did this pandal and with natural materials, sustainable materials. So people can experience that. Now, thirdly, for me, uh, no matter how much you say caring for people and everything, I need to learn something. So if I'm doing a pavilion, I will always push something so that I learn something.
Right.
So pavilion is one easy way for us to learn how to do something permanent,
Absolutely.
because you can experiment, because it is for a very small period of time. You can experiment. So
Absolutely, completely understand. I think that was a discussion that we were also having, that pavilions are actually like when we say temporary architecture, it's actually finding a permanent solution for architecture as a practice. But we'll come to that again because of your other pavilions that you've designed. Akshay, we'd like to know that you've designed the pavilion here. A lot of us have already experienced a pavilion. The context, you're not from Calicut. So the context was Calicut and you were creating the German pavilion. So what was your whole thought process behind that and how did it translate?
Yeah, so thank you for having us all here. Uh, I actually did not know that all of us were actually working on ideas for the pavilion. Whether that would have changed our thought or no, I wouldn't know. But I've always had respect for all the works that you all have been doing, and especially Vinu, with a lot of his works always seeming light. You know, that idea of lightness in a very different way, which is rooted also. So
Yeah.
there's that eccentricity that we've always looked up to. For us, it's always been the other side. We like heaviness. So yesterday I was talking about this. So when you said, yeah, you're not from here, so that's what we started off with. We are from nowhere because if you ask all four of us, all the four principals, all of us don't know where we belong because we are from everywhere but nowhere. Because if you ask me, when I was in Bombay, people thought I was from South Bangalore. When I was in Bangalore, people thought I was from Bombay. I worked in Baroda, but my parents were from Bombay. But I grew up in a place called Hubli.
Okay.
But we are originally from Kashmir.
Oh wow.
So
That
it's
we didn't
all
know.
it's all chaotic, and that's when you realize that you belong everywhere but nowhere. So the work actually is like that.
Okay.
So it's trying to find a sense of belonging at that moment wherever you are. So the project actually essentially looks at creating a sense of belonging, which is of course temporal, but that's who we are. So it's an extension of us. So when Vinu says there is something for you to learn, so for us, in a way, it is an extension of who we are. So it's about learning about ourselves
Right.
and the city, of course. So in a nutshell, that's how we looked at the whole idea. So that's it's in a it sort of is an extension of who we are. Maybe I can put it
Right.
that way.
Absolutely. We know you spoke about sustainable materials, and you also mentioned, like, I think the first interview that we did, and the first sentence that you said in the interview was, "Architecture is a sin, and architecture is a crime." Especially when you come to temporary structures, creating temporary structures, you have to be mindful of the afterlife of the material that you're using. In the past in the other two pavilions that I've seen of yours or read about, the Kullad Pavilion or the 3 Minute Corridor, you've used local material. So how important it is for you to, or how do you ensure that there's always an afterlife, and if there is no afterlife, it kind of disintegrates into the space that you create.
Yeah, I have to be a bit controversial about this. To be
Vinu
honest,
has to be controversial.
whenever somebody says this temporary pavilions are made and then it vanishes into the sand and all, no, it doesn't. There's a lot of waste generated.
Absolutely.
So I have been doing pavilions for almost all my career. I've done more than, I think, more than anybody. I have done more pavilions, I think, at this point of time. There is always an amount of waste. So the whole point is, when I say architecture is a sin, it's a sin. No question about it. Let's all understand that it is a sin. Now the next point is, how do you reduce it? But it is a necessary sin. It is something which we are doing. The program is great. KLF is a great program. These festivals are the one thing which now binds us, because otherwise we are all glued to our screens. So it's a great thing that these festivals are really connecting us. So pavilions are necessary in that sense. Now regarding the waste, I'm very proud to say that this particular German pavilion, the waste would be very minimal. Because yesterday I heard a session where Akshay was explaining that the bamboos and everything is local, and Nirmadi Collective also was a part of this. They source from local people, local craftsmen and everything. So there is a less amount of waste. Now coming back to the question of, like how much amount of waste are we supposed to do, that is something which we can only find out in coming time. So again, I would reiterate the sentence that I said earlier. We need to know how much we are wasting experimentally, no? Factually. So that is something we have to learn.
Right. Sham, my question to you would be when we are designing for pavilions, or it's about, like, even for instance, when we are coming to Kerala Literature Festival, it's unprecedented. The crowd that you see, it's not something that I'd anticipated. I've seen multiple design festivals, and you don't see the crowd like this anywhere else. The vibe is different. The people, it's a collective. People come out, experience a space, and then you have so many different kinds of people. So when you're conceptualizing for a pavilion, how do you then conceive, like when you're designing a home or a space or a hospitality, you know that there's a certain demographic. You know the kind of people who's going to experience a space. Here you don't know. So what goes on in your mind when you're designing, when you're conceptualizing a pavilion for a space like this?
I mean, fundamentally, there's a uh, irony in that. The fact is that, like, because we're so focused on curating every experience for like our own private comforts or creature comforts, and the proper public spaces are very less in our country, or like people don't really use any of these public spaces because we're always focused on having a very specific kind of uses that we want, and every user group has this, right? So I believe like a pavilion like this, we should not be looking at catering to different kinds of people. We should all be able to kind of adjust, like that. There's a beauty in large public plazas because you don't have a freedom to do whatever you want. But still, when you're in such spaces for a long time, you sort of form a certain dynamic with different groups and people learn to coexist. This learning to coexist can only happen when people have spaces like that, which they all feel like coming to, right? So if you're not trying to cater it to a specific group, and for example, Calicut Beach, without doing anything itself, people would just flock here, and any time of the day you can see like people from all financial classes or all age groups, everyone is here without anything. So a pavilion, if they can add a layer of comfort or add a layer of relaxation to that space or add more shade to that, people are going to come. But then learning, making them coexist by providing various activities that cater to different people is one thing, but you should not be so focused on making sure or caring for people's comforts too much,
Right.
because that I feel is the, like Vinu said, as architects we are the probably the most biggest culprits of that, because we keep curating experience for everyone. We say hospitality is everything, all of that, right? So in that sense I feel like a sense of openness and sense of freedom, and sometimes it can go wrong, but ultimately it would reach an equilibrium in which people can coexist. I feel like that's a crucial part to have in these pavilion spaces.
Right, right. Vinu, Akshay, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, so one of the things that we realized when we were designing this was I was listening. We read and we watch a lot of cinema. So there's this fantastic guy called Rory Sutherland from London. So he said when you design cities and you want people to walk more, you have to provide benches first. Then people start walking. So for us, in a way, the idea of a pavilion was more about the lightness of it to make people just walk in. It was about creating a sense of belonging. When I keep saying that again and again, it's about calling it a temporal home. We actually designed a home from our perspective, so much so that I've seen a lot of people who are just lying on the floor looking up. They have their own life that's happening around, and it's not about watching the pavilion anymore. Because you watch the pavilion from outside, and sometimes you're in awe of it, of what was the thought, and people want to ask questions. But once you're inside, nobody's looking around anymore. You feel that you belong there. And that's that sense that we got, which was not something that we were, what do you call, like, it was not intentional, but we knew that should ideally happen.
Right.
So in a way, it's like walking into your home. You could see a lot of people taking their shoes off or slippers
that's
off
okay.
and sitting with their feet on the top, and then you realize that it's comfortable.
Right.
So the idea of the pavilion from the outside is completely different. Pulls you in, but once you walk in, you're not looking at it anymore, and then it's sort of you start feeling that sense of a connect.
Right.
Was what the idea was for
Right.
us.
But how important it is, like, when you read about any space that you've created, it always comes with a lot of, it comes with a narrative. Okay, and I see that there's a lot of emphasis on storytelling and narrative. You have a certain aspect in mind when you conceive a space, but when people walk in and they they have a different perception about the space, right? So how important it is for you as creatives, you call yourself the narcissist architect. So how important is it for you, um, for the people who are experiencing your space to understand your perception of the space or your story or your narrative of the space? Do you want them to align with your thought
First of all, I should start with a disclaimer that that was a name made in irony when I was a student. It was more about self-love and everything. And now my ego is a bit too high to change it back to anything else. So let's leave it at that. But I would like to believe that as an architect, I always am the opposite to that, I feel. Because I try to understand the user more. Because, and also kind of it's easier for me to find purpose from what the user is saying than trying to put something of my own in there. I take inspiration from whatever they are saying and probably put it in my own language, right? So for me, controlling the narrative is not too keen. It is more about giving a place where I feel satisfied about with the outcome, but at the same time that it can grow with time and the user kind of lets when like Akshay just said, like how people are just coming and experiencing the space. And so it is not about the structure as much for me than so building is not like two-dimensional like as it often is these days with images and everything on all of our social media marketing. So if you can feel a space, right? Just like how when you meet a person, how they look is just your first impression of them.
process? Right.
But whether you have a long-term relation with them or like you have remember them for life or like anything of that sort comes in how that person makes you feel.
Right.
And it is not at all dependent on how they look. So I feel like every space is pretty much the same. And I would like to create spaces that make you feel something. Like say, for example, if I'm making a home or if somebody an NRI is coming back and building a home and they want to feel home. So I would like to evoke that emotion than create something that is just superficially that looks like a traditional Kerala home. So the emotion part is where I focus on more, and I don't want to control it. I would try to probably nudge it in certain directions, and probably from that point they can write their own narratives with it.
Right. Right. Vinu?
To be honest, look at all the ugly structures. In the name of festival, what we are sitting underneath and everything. The only design structure is that pavilion, and that speaks for itself. So, as architects, our job has become easy because there are a lot of ugly structures out there. For festivals, they just make some shed because it is the land is only given for few days, and they have to rely on this. You cannot blame even them. They have to rely on it. So, people are faced with ugliness all over the place. Now, look at the government projects that is happening. When we are saying that, when you are asking how much concerned are architects, we don't have to be concerned. We just have to be a bit, having a bit more common sense than the idiot who designed the government structures, the PWD, the housing department. All of these fellows are making our jobs easier. People are seeing ugliness on a daily basis everywhere. Every beach is ruined. Now, in that sense, Calicut is an exception because that freedom circle is designed by our Vivek sir and their D-Earth and all. That is the only thing I am seeing. So I am building almost in every place where I am going. Like I am working in almost all states in the country, and everywhere when you go to a nice beach, ruined, one stupid kiosk is put. So people are hating what the government is giving because government doesn't care. If you ask this question, that fellow will ask you, "What are you saying?" If you ask, "Are you concerned about people and all?" Who is concerned about people here? So, for us, the job has become very easy. Just to be one level better than that idiot. That's it. So, my thought process was to think that, like at least give them some magic when they are coming for here. That is why when Sham is saying that people are coming, Calicut people are coming everywhere, in Goa, in Bengal, everywhere people are coming because they are in search for something less mundane. You get it? So,
Absolutely.
architects have their life very easy, to be honest. No? We just have to do better than the shit that is already there.
Akshay, what would you like to say to this?
I forgot what the question is now. No, in a way, I think it's also to do with the cities, right?
Yeah.
One thing that we've realized over the last 15, 20 days that we've been here is the idea, the level of curiosity, right? I think every city is now sort of pushing. One of the facts what Vinu is saying is actually true, where what else do you do? At least here you have the privilege of having a shore and you have a
Right.
fantastic beach. What about cities that don't have that?
Right.
And that's exactly what we've been fighting to do through our works. Of course, very urban. But in a way, we have to start questioning typologies, because otherwise, it can't be that only these are the forms that allow you that sense of freedom in
Right.
whichever way. Because everything else is sort of justified with numbers, and the idea of form making is getting lost completely. The typologies are not being questioned.
Right.
So, in a way, that is also an attempt for us to talk about questioning typology, saying why should an apartment be like this? Why should a institute, which we do a lot of, should
Yeah.
only be like this? So questioning the typologies is also an intent,
Right.
not just through pavilions like these, but through real life scenarios.
Absolutely. So when you're designing for, spaces, you also have to be mindful. We were just having this discussion about it's a very different crowd that comes. It's a mix of crowd. People who come for design, people who come for entertainment, people who are just curious to see what's happening. How again, people may not be entirely responsible about protecting the structure. They are just there to experience the structure. So there are two concerns here. One is safety, and the other is the structure itself. So then, how do you create structures which kind of combats the curiosity of the onlooker without it falling down, and how important it is for you to for you to have that structure intact till the end of the pavilion, or would you rather have people taking parts of it and going away? Because there have been instances that has happened as well.
Let people take. What is wrong in people taking?
That's what I wanted to hear.
That is a great thing. No, if people is taking one part of the pavilion and going. Yesterday, it seems there was a huge crowd or something. They took some bamboo pieces and went. Let them. See, that is something which is normal.
Right.
So we just did a pavilion in Serendipity Art
Okay.
Festival. It's in the Goa Miramar beach itself, and every day kids are climbing on top of the coolers. It's made out of like mud cups. Kids are climbing on the top of coolers. Some of them are breaking and stuff like that. This will happen, but at least they are interacting with it. That is great. See, the best part is what we love. I don't think Akshay would feel any bad that half of his pavilion is gone by tomorrow. You understand? Now, safety part, of course,
I think he
should
may
have
mind a little bit, but
now,
half of it is gone.
half. So 1/4 gone means no problem. He is fine with it. He would actually love if somebody took it as a as a souvenir. It's a great thing.
So it just reminds me of that ad where the installation is made of gems and one person picks up and the entire installation kind of collapses. And that brings me back to Kullad installation. What happens if someone picks up that Kullad?
Yeah. So if it is designed in such a way that one jump can take away the entire structure and fall down,
Then
then it is a problem. But thankfully, you take one or two coolers, it's fine. Let's say you take half the coolers, maybe there is some problem, and it's difficult.
Right.
None of us do like that. We have our safety concerns. We have our structural experts. So yesterday Arpita was saying, whatever you are seeing on top, 1/3 is dug down
Right.
in this pavilion. So there is no way that somebody can, literally rip it off. Then Guruvayur Keshavan should come. So we don't have that problem. Now regarding the other part is where it is comical actually. That we are protecting so much. We are trying to make people scared about these things is not a good way to go. Let them enjoy. That's okay. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. Coming back to one of the points that you raised, and that's going to go to, don't have that smile, that question will go to everyone. But I always felt that whenever I looked at temporary structures or pavilions, even as someone who was just a person who's interested in design, and not when I was with this magazine, I always thought that it was a great opportunity to experiment on a smaller scale, um, like a typology or a technique or a material for the future. So, in that sense, temporary architecture is not really temporary. It has the scope of being something really permanent. It's got the scope of being a permanent solution to something, a problem that might exist today. So, would you be able to give us some instances where you all have explored something or you've seen something in your travels or in the practices that or in the structures that you've created?
Yeah, I'll. So for us, it was this particular work that we were doing. We realized that the cultural implication is a lot more stronger than the material implication.
Right,
Because now I know that what Vinu was actually trying to say is the kind of pavilions that are existing here should ideally be designed
right.
rather than just kept.
Hmm, hmm.
So hopefully from next year, it becomes a part of the ethos of the edition itself, where they start getting architects and designers and local and people from outside
Right.
coming and designing. And I think that's the biggest takeaway for us. Because if you start seeing value in something simple that's done there, then I'm sure people will start pushing for everything else to also be pushed to that level.
Right.
And that level of hard work that is required to make something like that happen is something that will become a norm. And then tomorrow you would actually, that I think is the biggest takeaway for us.
Right.
It's not the material, it's not that. I think it's the culture.
Right.
The culture of what architecture is able to give back.
Hmm, hmm.
And that will be an extraordinary moment if we start seeing it happen and the next editions will actually have pavilions designed by people. I
Right,
think that'll be
right.
incredible to see.
Absolutely. Sham, Vinu.
I mean, the takeaways I would like, I think, just like Akshay said, the material learning and all of that we'll still be doing. I mean, or like, I mean, probably we were also experimenting with bamboo and everything, which we normally don't do. But then I would also like to believe that with every project of ours, we also try to do something new and you're trying to push yourself, right? So that part is always going to be there. But I felt like with this, maybe because I've not been involved in public projects as much or something, like because I was thinking a lot more about how the public are going to interact, and also because I'm from Calicut, I'm also going to think, oh, this is going to happen if I do this. It's going to, like we said, like people are going to interact with the public thing, so you cannot expect to keep people out and all of that. So for me, the biggest learning was to kind of go through that process, and also once this was built, I was coming here and I was also analyzing. But it's maybe it's not for a project per se, but in generally how your design thinking works with more behavioral aspects of it and than just material aspects of it. And for a public space, I feel more than the material, you have to really focus on the behavioral aspects of a crowd, how people act in a group, and you also need to let people kind of enjoy there. And like otherwise, if people are actually getting involved and taking a bamboo, that's a better thing than with nobody caring about looking at it, or it just feels alien to them. Something because you always see these kind of fancy pavilions sometimes, which I'm not going to name or anything, but then really fancy pavilion with not any of yours. I love all of yours. No, I'm just saying, like, sometimes they feel like so out of context and out of thing. Maybe it's my design thinking, but also at the same time, it prevents, say, the common man from going in because they feel alienated from such a fancy structure when they see it. So it needs to have that. For example, the pavilion here right now has that sense of curiosity, evokes that sense of curiosity that people come in, but at the same time, it also has that warmth that lets them want to sit there and be a part of it and enjoy it, like because that material familiarity or the spatial familiarity of it. So I feel that's my takeaway from it.
Absolutely. Vinu.
So for me also very similar, but I did the pavilion for Binale in 2014, and we experimented with ferrocement and jute sacks. Today we are doing most of our schools or buildings with that technique. And if it was not for the pavilion, I wouldn't have been able to do the testing and stuff like that. So some learning actually happens, but generally it is a bit difficult for architects to work in that time constraint. There is a lot of time constraint that happens with this. Yesterday I couldn't believe, that when Akshay said that this pavilion was built in 17 days. So thankfully I didn't win the competition. If I had won the competition, you would have seen my pavilion on KLF 2027. So I cannot do this, but it is too much to be asked in that small amount of time, is what I feel.
Right, right. Vinu, another thing that I wanted to ask you about was the 3 minute corridor, and I realized that every design that you do, whether it's a pavilion or whether it's a residential structure or whether it's any space that you create, you try to interact with the local materials or scrap or found materials rather. But this question is also for both of you, where you are not just talking about the materials, but also there's a social message, or there's some kind of a message there. So could you tell us a little more about the 3 minute corridor, because I know you use tires there, and why did you use tires and why is it called the 3 minute corridor?
So tires is the biggest waste material that is being produced globally. In one day, almost 1 million tires are being wasted in one day. So you can just imagine in a year it is 365 million tires that is being wasted, and at a rate which is so fast that we are not able to comprehend it. And most of these so-called European countries who claim we are, like very energy efficient, waste friendly, and stuff like that, ship their waste to
True.
places like India,
Absolutely.
Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Interestingly, when we did a TED talk regarding this, they said that the fact should be there. You should provide receipts that the actual, transportation is happening. So we found out that on the internet, these multinational companies are very adept in removing all the receipts and everything. You don't find it. So we thought we will go to the Cochin shipyard just to check. And there in the manifest it is written, Pakka, clean and clear. Who is going to check in Cochin shipyard? So we found out that there are around 30,000 container ships traveling globally with tire waste to be dumped. Because it cannot be dumped on sea because tire will float up. So that is one reason why they don't dump in the sea. Otherwise, sea would have been the dumping place. They dump it on land simply because Indians and many of the subcontinent people use it to burn illegally. Like most of the tar roads are actually used to pulverize the tire and burn it. This is illegal. For a movie or something, if you burn a tire, you will be caught by the commissioner itself. But every tarring is happening with this tire only. So they dump it illegally in here. And out of 30,000 ships, 27,000 land in India, in Indian ports. So we take the bulk of all this tire waste. So there is a broker for this, an international broker, that is Gulf countries. Gulf countries keep it in their sand dunes or desert or wherever it is, and then slowly ship it. So when I was offered a project to build a pavilion in there, and what else should I build? So I built it with the same tires, saying that you don't need to burn it. The best way to dispose it is to use it for your housing, because people need housing. That is going to be a question for us for a long time to come. And tire is actually one of the great construction materials of modern day, because once you plaster it and stuff like that, it becomes inert. Otherwise, the toxic thing, you cannot burn it. And the pyrolysis is a very expensive procedure. Most of the pyrolysis plants are shut down in India. So using tires in our construction is one of the best ways to go forward. And we are now doing the SP Balasubramanian Museum, the great singer who passed away during COVID. His samadhi and museum is built with tires. We are doing 2 schools with tires. So I believe tires will become, but it all started with that pavilion.
Right.
And they were not too happy about it. There were a lot of conflict in that area, quarrels. They said we don't want tires, but I stuck on to it, saying that this is your material, let's use it. And thankfully the curator was a great person.
Right. Akshay, coming to you, like he spoke about the tires and materials that you've used. What is the afterlife of the pavilion that you created here?
So, two things. One is we don't look at architecture as an activist, with all honesty. We are looking at it from a cultural perspective.
Right.
So, as much as everything that's come here has an afterlife, because that was one of the things that we really wanted to do, because where else will it go? So, we worked with Niall, who's right here, and a lot of other people, like even Pendol Planner and all of them. So, we have this, there are actually multiple discussions happening. Maybe I can put it across this way. One was, can this move to some other place?
Right.
Is also one of the thoughts, because we are actually quite prepared to take it off, and we know where the paya will go, where the bamboos will go, what. So there are a lot of things that has already been planned out. But then there was also these questions that we started talking to each other, and then we realized that afterlife, does it mean that everything needs to go out somewhere, get disposed of, or is there a way that it gets reused or rebuilt?
Right.
Is also something that we're exploring.
Absolutely.
So in a way, the afterlife for this particular project, we'll know in a few days. In fact, we start tomorrow itself. But in a way, it's also questioning that narrative, saying, does it only mean taking it out and then disposing it off in a more sensitive
So,
way?
yeah.
Or is there a different possibility to recreate a pavilion and treat the bamboo and relook at the whole narrative itself? Is
Absolutely.
also something that we're exploring.
Right, right, absolutely. Coming to another question where it is not specific to what you have created, but we see a lot of exhibitions happening, and like again pointing to what Vinu said because he seems to be saying the most controversial things here. But Vinu said that you see a lot of ugly structures around you. Most of the exhibitions say that it's sustainable. The pavilions are reused and everything, but there's a certain amount of waste generated. But when you're creating pavilions or when you're thinking of pavilions, do you also think of exhibition spaces in a larger context where it is not just a pavilion in an exhibition, but the entire exhibition itself as a pavilion? Have you ever thought about that? Because the amount of design festivals, just design festivals that are happening in India is crazy. I don't know the other festivals that are happening.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. There is a lot happening. Primarily because you can understand. I don't mean to be political, but every act is political today. So, in some sense, you can see that the lethargy of our government, not just the state or central government, general, even bureaucrats, you can see that has led to, you know, private individuals and private entities walk up and do these festivals. It is in some sense necessary and unnecessary. We don't know. As far as architects are concerned, this is an opportunity for us to do something new. Now, while you said that, I would like to say one more thing. Many a time, architects get the least amount of time to do something,
Yeah.
because blame it on the organizers, blame it on the government who is not giving ample time or giving permissions on time. Architects are left with little or no choice to, like just to run back to
Right.
back. I don't know when Akshay slept. You get it? So 17 days completing a pavilion, and that too when people are coming. And towards the end, I know how organizers also behave. So nobody is going to be kind at you. And at that time, it's like do or die situation. But what we lose in those precious moments is a great design,
Right.
is a great execution. We need more time. So while you are saying this, even if there is just one pavilion, true, lot of ugly structures, but at least one pavilion always gives people inspiration to think something new, because
Right.
somebody amongst here might actually think, why don't I build a home like this?
Right.
So it is an inspiration. You have to understand. But blame it on someone. I don't know. Blame it on the organizers or the government, the permissions or the lack of planning. Architects generally get a
Very limited time.
very limited time. And the way things are in our country, it is almost palpable to see that the government officer who never cared for anything else is suddenly very strict about us few architects who are putting something. When they are pouring concrete, without any thought process, they are pouring concrete over dogs lying on the street. All those things are happening.
Don't
No
say.
problem. Yeah, there is a video of some dog being tarred upon, tarred, on road tarring, some dog got tarred. So these are all normal things that is happening in India. There is nothing to be, nothing any more shocking for us. So at a time when this kind of activities are happening, pavilions are a great way for people to understand. But still, I would still blame, starting from organizers, all those things, that you have to give some more time. 17 days or last final day, okay, we'll plunge in all the money. You do it. It's not good enough.
Right.
You need to give more time for architects to do. And I'm sure many architects here would love to do their version, interpretation, not just us. Everybody would have their own interpretation. And then people will love it. That is how this is going to move.
Right. Sham, would you like
Yeah,
to?
in fact, just one point I wanted to add. That's exactly what the intent was. That it should push that from next editions and
There are more pavilions.
festivals that happen. Of course, there should be.
Yeah.
Of course, everyone should. That's why when we got to know that everyone had an interpretation of it in some way, the first question was, "What was your thought?" So it's even I want to really know. So it's
I
interesting.
am sure his pavilion happened not more expensive than the rest of the pavilions. Even though rest of them look very fast and everything, the making price of this is all same.
Yeah.
So it's not like his pavilion is too expensive or anything. It's not like, oh, we cannot afford the expense. Nothing like that. Organizers have to consider this part. If you plan it better, we can do it better. No? But then even government also should be supportive. It's like they will say, La, only 3 days for you. 3 days, what we will do?
3 days.
I think it also comes down to the fact of how people value design, right? Because people always have this thing, oh, why do you charge so much to draw 2 lines? The fact that there's a lot of time that is needed to draw those 2 lines in 5 minutes or anything like that. So that time factor, like Vinu rightly said right now. So the fact there's a lot of thought process that goes behind it. Even if you're probably sitting and sketching it out in 1 hour, probably you thought about it in your head for days or like stuff like that. And even after sketching it out, maybe when you're testing it on site, probably if Akshay had more time, maybe it would have evolved into something better when they're solving it out on site, because it's not very usually that we work on with materials like this or anything of that sort. So right now, probably whatever his iterations were, they barely had enough time to even go through that first detail that they made. Than to if they had say another 2 months, probably it could have refined into something way more better.
Yeah.
And like Akshay said, I was also thinking, because Kerala has been happening for a few years. We didn't have a pavilion like this before. It's come to a point where we have a pavilion like this now. So maybe
Next
in
year
the
we
future
will have
years,
all three of your pavilions.
not just I mean that doesn't matter. But whoever it is, let the festival become a lot more nicer with a lot more nicer things to look at.
Yes.
I was amazed to see that there are these many number of pavilions, you know. So this is a huge festival. So it should not be something like this, you know. And there are, and the Calicut chapter is amazing. You know, I have seen
Absolutely.
all over India many chapters, IAA chapters, but the Calicut chapter is unreal in that sense. You know, these guys are they come together. No, I'm not trying to say that, because I have seen it, almost every Indian chapters. And Calicut chapter is, if there is any program. So right now when Akshay said this, I am sure Akshay also would have been amazed, you know, to see suddenly Nihal, Vivek ji, everybody is coming there, you know, and they are all partaking into it. Arpita also said the same thing, you know, everybody is partaking. Kozhikode is a place where everybody comes together. Even a stranger who is a pedestrian on the path also might come and help you out. That is how
In
Calicut
fact,
is.
we had a lot of people helping us out
See?
without even knowing what we were doing. They're excited. And
Right.
there are times when at midnight, there were unloading that was happening, and it was just us as a team standing. There were people who are there, come, let me help you.
Correct.
Without knowing the language, you know.
Correct.
We didn't even know what to ask them, but they were all there.
See?
Yeah, absolutely. I think festivals like this give everyone a chance to interact with design. Right?
Not so easy, to be honest.
Yeah.
So right now we just did a pavilion which became in the Miramar beach. It became a permanent pavilion.
Right.
So on the beach there are some restrictions, it seems, you know. So government said that we cannot do the pavilion. Foundation has to be done by the government. So this is an interesting story. Yesterday I told my friends, you know. And Miramar Beach Pavilion also was supposed to be completed for 2024 Serendipity Festival. Simply because the foundation was not, I'm not the culprit here, okay. Simply because the foundation,
Case in
government,
point.
government had to do the foundation for, they took another 6 months to do a small bit of foundation. That is how slow government works. You should understand that. And they don't care.
Yeah.
No matter what is happening, they don't care. And then to make it even more interesting, after doing foundation, so this was a typical scene from this old Bob and Molly comics, you know. Most of the people would understand this. After doing the foundation, I said, now I am going to dig a bit and connect it to the steel, because the pavilion has steel. And then they said, no, you cannot connect it with the steel. So I was kind of thinking, why would he say that? You know, it's a Zoom meeting. So I said, no, I have to connect it with the steel. Otherwise, my vault will fall, because it is a non-reinforcement. So the load has to transfer all the way to this thing. No, you cannot do this. So we said, we will do it. And the next day I sent my people. And I told her, dig just a bit, 2 centimeter, you will find the steel, then you will connect it and everything. Morning he went, he didn't call me till afternoon. And we are very strict about this kind of timeline. So I got very angry. I called this boy and told him, hey, just 2 inch of, you know, chipping the concrete and you didn't call me. Cheta, we have been digging the whole day. There is no steel inside this. So then I am like fully furious. And I am like, I can't believe this. It's a government project. And millions of people will be coming around, because it is a permanent thing. You don't even know the number of people who are coming there.
Yeah.
I said, no chance. There would be steel. How would they do that without steel and all? Allah Jeta, I can say. And then he sent a picture. There is no steel.
Okay.
So Then I remembered something in Bowen and Molly comics, So the government contractor did a building, and on the inauguration day, the people around planned that they will break it with coconut. No, it is a normal procedure to throw coconut onto the building, and then that is an auspicious way. So the contractor came and said, no, you cannot use coconut. We won't allow you to use coconut. So I don't know if you guys know about this Boban and Molly characters. There is Appy Hippie, there is Amma and Boban and Molly. All these characters said, no, this is the way we do. So then the contractor said, let me move a bit aside. And then in the comic strip, it is like full poga. And then the contractor is coming and saying, now it is auspicious, isn't it? Because they broke with the coconut, entire structure fell down. So this is what happens in today's India. If they didn't put steel in the and how much they saved? It's a tiny pavilion.
I mean,
They would have saved 20,000 rupees and
that wouldn't have been to save also probably, but from what I see.
maybe in
It's
practice
just-
means what are the government buildings we are going into?
Yeah.
Be afraid of the government buildings newly built. So this is the scenario that is happening. The reality is much more worse than you can imagine. So with this scenario, how do you expect us to contribute in a system where everything is for them? They don't care. They don't put the steel. They don't put the concrete. How do you do that? Maybe the questions have to be directed to the other people who are responsible here.
Okay, to the other people who are responsible here. But I'd like to make a point here that this is a festival that brings together all kinds of people. Like when I come from Bombay, and when I go to a design festival, you see a certain class of people coming there. Like people who are either architects or designers, people who are making homes, or people who are buying stuff. So it's a very consolidated kind of crowd that comes there. And people who are already acquainted with design for the way it is. Here, what I see is everyone, like I said earlier, everyone who's curious about design, everyone who's just curious about what's going on here, and a lot of people who come to see Sunita Will. So you see every kind of people, from students to families to everyone. So this is a great space. And also when you travel abroad, you see that the waterfront is always a place where people gather. And you don't see that in India. In India, where you see waterfront, you see a nala or a gutter. Especially that happens in Bombay. Wherever there's a waterfront, everything is dumped there. So I think this is an absolutely great initiative where the beach kind of becomes, the focal or the fulcrum of the entire city, and the city kind of comes together. Like last evening when I came here, I was overwhelmed with the crowd, not because it was crowded, but just because of the vibe and how people had just come together for literature. Doesn't happen anywhere else. So it's a great opportunity to get the locals, to get people, every kind of person acquainted with design for the way it is, to understand what design can do to the cities. Like you mentioned, Freedom Square is the only encounter with design that happens here. But when KLF is happening, and if there were more pavilions or if there were more permanent structures, I think that's a great way to interact with design and to, like you said, what is government giving us? But people also need to know what is possible, right, in terms of design. So when you see that, people start questioning, and that is when people start demanding. And I think that is where forums like KLF and designers minds like yours come together to bring that change. And maybe it's a small change, like you said, it's one pavilion this year, but maybe we have 4 pavilions next year. So that's, like, we have 9 minutes. So if anyone has questions, y'all can.
Yeah, hi. The question's open to all. So always as we start designing, we have some sort of expectation. We kind of, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we kind of have this kind of narrative that we envisage and we work towards. And always when the end result and people interact with it, and we kind of now we're experiencing that. Would you do anything differently now that you've seen how people have interacted with it? And this is to everyone.
No, I think for us, I think what we've realized over the last few years is we've realized that the idea of culture, context, and clarity is what is important. So if you ask me straight, is there a change of thought? Absolutely not. I think we are enjoying that whole process. Very rarely do we get to enjoy our own spaces. I mean, with the kind of work that we do, we are so overwhelmed with the pressure and the work of doing something that I've not spent so much time in any of our projects, honestly. So that itself is allowing us to understand, and maybe there's a lot for me to take back rather than to add something here.
I think, like I said earlier, it's for me. Basically, it's more about creating a canvas for people to express themselves, and especially when it's a public space or if it's a home, something for them to build a life on, and like then control the narrative of what exactly I want from it. So pretty much like Akshay said, I feel like it's always about understanding. You may have thought of something that's going to happen in a space, and probably when I go back, I try to see how the space has evolved, and probably that helps me evolve a space better in the future, understanding how people interact with it.
For me, it's like every time you do one work only, then you realize the mistakes you did. So then you go back to the point again. So for me, it's always trying to understand uh, how it like how it can be better and how you can better it. And I share the same point like how Akshay said that like you try to enjoy it, but still learn, keep on learning. Everything is about whether you do a home or a structure or temporary or permanent, whatever it is, you keep on learning. So structure always tells you that like you thought wrong, and you learn from it. You keep on learning. That's the whole idea of this.
Yeah, and one point that I can add also is also it's going beyond the idea of just a project now, because then it also talks about the practice. Yesterday, Vinu and I were discussing a little bit about how practices also need to evolve. It can't be just the project anymore. So for all of us, probably the learning is more about the practice of what was required from a more humanistic perspective of what could have been done better, etc., rather than just the project, because the people who are actually making it happen already know what they're going to do. And the question is more about how are we sort of aligning ourselves to that. So it's also learnings that go back to the practice rather than just a project anymore.
Hi, sir. Actually, I'm doing a woodworking company. Actually, I recently worked in Bangalore. I recently know that there many architects are telling that they are using sapwood. Every wood has hardwood and sapwood. Okay. According to their market was selling sapwood. What's your opinion regarding this one?
അയ്യോ അതിനെ അതെന്തുവാ സംഭവം എനിക്കൊന്നും മനസ്സിലായില്ല.
ഒരു wood, every wood has hardwood, sapwood, two layers. The sapwood was lighter layer, hardwood was a harder layer, whiter one and darker one.
വെള്ള ഉപയോഗിക്കാറില്ല പൊതുവേ.
ഉപയോഗിക്കാറില്ല.
ഇല്ല.
ബാംഗ്ലൂരിൽ നമ്മൾ കേട്ടത് ഒരുപാട്
ബാംഗ്ലൂരിൽ ഒരുപാട് തട്ടിപ്പ് നടക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. അവിടെ എന്താ സംഭവിക്കുന്നതെന്ന് ഒരു പിടുത്തവും ഇല്ല.
അതെ, എനിക്ക് മനസ്സിലായിട്ടില്ല.
ആർക്കും ഒരു പിടുത്തവും ഇല്ല.
എനിക്ക് മനസ്സിലായിട്ടില്ല.
ഞങ്ങൾ രണ്ടുപേരും ബാംഗ്ലൂരിലാണ് നിൽക്കുന്നത്. ഒരു പിടുത്തവും ഇല്ല. എത്തോ ഇല്ലയോന്ന് പോലും അറിയത്തില്ല രാവിലെ പുറപ്പെട്ട. അതുകൊണ്ട് ബാംഗ്ലൂരിന്റെ കാര്യം ഒന്നും പറയാതിരിക്കുന്നതല്ലേ. മറ്റെന്തെങ്കിലും ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ചോദിക്കാം.
Within 17 days, you have designed and done a wonderful thing. First, a nice congratulations to you. And I have a doubt, sir. So before that, I think you could have worked a lot. So at the time of designing this particular pavilion, the culture of Calicut, its socio-economic background, everything has come in your mind, or you just simply designed the thing? Because when I visited the Jaipur festival, I looked so many excited and very amazing design in the pavilions. But here only one German pavilion is designed. So before doing this, have you done any such studies or like that?
Of course. So every work needs to come out of research and respect, right? So the kind of research that goes behind for every single thing that we do goes beyond what you just see now. So the construction of it, if I can call it construction of it, is took 17 days, but there was a lot of thought process that's also an extension of who we are. So if I say it's 17 days, it's probably 41 years because that's how old I am. So it's about that whole lifetime of thought and experience and collective for all of us working together, putting it together. That act of making it happen is what the experience is. It cannot be just that one mind saying, oh, I thought about this and let's make it happen. It's a fantastic collective energy. At the end of the day, I don't think any one of us single-handedly can take that idea of saying we did it, but it takes a lot more. and it goes beyond who we are right now and goes back all the time to where you were born and what was your upbringing and so many other things, right? Where we come from, the idea of roots. So every single project is actually an extension of who we are, not just right now, but where we come from. So in a way, I think that's how we looked at it.
Yeah, good afternoon. Uh, my question is to Mr. Vinu. I think I enjoyed his part a little bit much more because you were even very openly telling about the negativities of your system. So I would just like to. I am a doctor. Even we also have many worries and complaints regarding the system, especially government system. So as an architect or your architectural association, what can you do for making a change in the present situation? Because we know that change always comes with resistance. So can you please enumerate what can, as a part, as an architect, what you can do to make change in the system? Thank you.
So basically, private endeavors are the ones which will bring out changes, and individual. Like all three of us are doing whatever we can with our own capacity. Now, definitely, government help would push us much forward. You should understand that. So that moment should come, hopefully. But still, as private individuals, we are doing our part, and we are hoping to make change. Because time is less, we cannot continue explaining more, but yes, the change is happening. That is definitely why at least there is a German pavilion here, because they believed that Indian architects are capable of doing a pavilion in 70 days. No, so in some sense that is good. So yes, change is coming.
So thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for all your insights. It was lovely chatting with you, and have a great afternoon. Thank you.